Jobu Oniwa. Jobu Masataka Oniwa is the first mandatory boss players face in Sekiro. You'll encounter him at Ashina outskirts, specifically in the Castle Gate Fortress area.
My name is Jobu Masataka Oniwa!
At this point in the narrative, Ashina is under heavy assault by the Interior Ministry, the central government's forces, and Jobu is stationed as the guardian of Ashina Castle's main gate. He's essentially one of the last lines of defense before the enemy can push into the heart of the castle.
As I breathe, you will not pass the castle gate!
Before pledging his loyalty to Ashina, Jobu was the leader of a notorious bandit group. He was personally defeated by Isshin Ashina himself, and rather than being executed, he was taken in and recruited. From there, Jobu steadily rose through the ranks until he was trusted with raising Genichiro, Isshin's grandson. In the original Japanese, his role is referred to as Moriyaku, a kind of appointed guardian or caretaker responsible for the upbringing and education of children from noble families. So Jobu wasn't just some soldier thrown in front of a gate. He was someone deeply tied to the Ashina family's inner circle since Genichiro was a child, a bond built on years of trust. Jobu fights with a yari, a hook-tipped spear that originally belonged to a samurai named Shuzen Tamura, the very man seen being defeated by Isshin in the game's opening cutscene. Jobu's original spear, which had a distinctive horn-like shape, was broken during the Ashina rebellion. There's also a well-known exploit in the community called the Jobu Skip, where you can climb one of the towers on the battlefield and he'll eventually run off the edge of a cliff to his death.
Bye, have a great time.
Lady Butterfly. Lady Butterfly is an optional boss found in Hirata State. From a young age, Lady Butterfly trained in the art of illusion deep in the Usui forest. She was acquainted with Owl, and the two of them joined forces with Isshin Ashina to reclaim land that had been seized by a samurai named Shuzen Tamura. Yes, the same one whose spear Jobu now wields. It was Owl who eventually entrusted Lady Butterfly with training a young wolf, not long after Owl found him abandoned on the battlefield. At some point, Lady Butterfly turned. She sided with the bandit group that attacked Hirata State and held a young Kuro captive under a hypnotic illusion. Her motivation is never elaborated on, deliberately left as one of the game's lingering mysteries. That said, there's a compelling theory about why she switched sides. She may have been after the power of the dragon's blood for herself. The key hint comes from the item she drops upon defeat, the Sakura Droplet, which is used by players to increase resurrective power and allow an additional resurrection. Her fighting style is also worth paying attention to. She uses kicks to deflect attacks, a technique reminiscent of the lone shadows from the central forces, along with elements that echo the monks of Senpo Temple. This has led some to theorize that she may have had ties to the central forces at some point, possibly even playing a role in training their lone shadows. And then there's the twist. Once you land the first death blow, it turns out you've been fighting an illusion the entire time. The real Lady Butterfly only reveals herself when the second phase begins. Genichiro Ashina is Isshin Ashina's adopted grandson and the de facto leader of the Ashina clan throughout the first half of the game, and one of the few bosses you'll face more than once. In total, you'll encounter him 3 times. The first is during the prologue at Ashina Reservoir, in a fight that's designed to be lost, no matter how skilled you are. Genichiro is not of Ashina blood. He was born to a common family and adopted by Isshin after his birth mother died during the old rebellion. Even his name carries an interesting detail. The character Gen means bowstring, while Ikiro is a name traditionally given to the firstborn son in a family. Genichiro was trained by a mysterious figure named Lady Tomo, a master swordswoman connected to Fountainhead Palace and the Okami clan, who taught him both swordsmanship and a secret lightning technique later known as the Lightning of Tomo. Some of his archery techniques were likely also picked up from Jobu Masataka Oniwa. In his younger years, he was close to both Emma and Lord Takeru, the Divine Heir before Kuro, and the three of them would often gather near the Everblossom tree, listening to Takeru play music while Tomo danced. When Ashina came under relentless assault from the Interior Ministry and Isshin's health continued to deteriorate, Genichiro came to the conclusion that Ashina could no longer be defended through conventional means. That's when he began delving into what the game calls heretical arts. He consumed the rejuvenating waters and transformed into an entity known as a Red Eye, a subject of the immortality research being conducted by physician Dujun and his master Dosaku. He also secretly collaborated with the Senpo sect to resist the Interior Ministry and attempted to kidnap Kuro in order to harness the power of the dragon's heritage to save Ashina. What makes this especially tragic is that Isshin himself opposed Genichiro's plan. He disagreed with using the rejuvenating waters and Kuro's blood as a means of protecting Ashina, which is why he quietly tasked Emma with helping Wolf rescue Kuro from his own grandson. So beneath the surface, there's a deeply painful conflict, a grandfather and grandson who both want to save Ashina, but through opposing means, working against each other in silence. In their final encounter, Genichiro has already struck and wounded Kuro with the mortal blade. Wolf and Genichiro clash one last time, and despite Genichiro wielding the mortal blade, he falls, acknowledging his own powerlessness. He says that his grandfather is a different story, and with that, he turns the mortal blade on himself, sacrificing his own life to resurrect Isshin at the height of his power, giving Ashina one final chance to survive. That sacrifice marks the end of Genichiro's story. Guardian Ape. Guardian Ape, known in Japanese as Shishizaru, meaning lion monkey, is a mandatory boss encountered in the Sunken Valley Passage. He is widely considered one of the most iconic bosses in Sekiro, largely because of a second phase twist. Guardian Ape is an immortal creature living in solitude within the Sunken Valley, and he guards the lotus of the palace, a rare flower whose scent is known to attract female apes to his territory. He tends to it deliberately, waiting with a single purpose: to offer it to a new mate. It's a small detail, but it adds a tragic dimension to what initially reads as just a brutal, feral boss. Beneath all the violence and raw physicality, Guardian Ape is simply a lonely creature waiting for someone. As for the source of his immortality, the most likely explanation is that he consumed rejuvenating waters flowing into the Sunken Valley from Fountainhead Palace. His continued survival is then sustained by an undying centipede, a parasite dwelling inside his body that refuses to let its host die. After defeating the Guardian Ape, you'll receive an item called the Slender Finger, a slender woman's finger described as having been found inside the ape's stomach, partially digested. You can bring this to the Sculptor, and when you give it to him along with a bottle of monkey booze, he reveals something. The finger belonged to an old sparring partner of his named Kingfisher, a female shinobi who trained alongside the Sculptor in the Sunken Valley. It had small holes bored along its length, and when blown into, produced a piercing whistle that could fill the entire valley. And also the sword stuck in the Guardian Ape's neck belongs to Kingfisher. The Headless Ape fight is a separate, optional encounter that appears in Ashina depths after you've already defeated Guardian Ape in the Sunken Valley. Here, the Headless Ape returns, and this time, Hez not alone. He calls upon the female ape he had been waiting for all along, who joins him in fighting Wolf. The fight can only be properly ended with the mortal blade, as it's the only weapon capable of permanently severing the ape's immortality. Once you do, a special immortality severed animation plays, and that's the moment Guardian Ape truly dies for the first only time. Folding Screen Monkeys. Folding Screen Monkeys is a boss unlike anything else you've encountered in the game up to this point. It's found in the elusive hall within Senpu Temple, a room you access by interacting with a small bell in front of the sculptor's idol in the main hall. Before getting into the boss itself, it's worth understanding who these monkeys actually are. They are the souls of children who died as a result of experiments conducted by the monks of Senpu Temple in their pursuit of immortality. Rather than passing on peacefully, those souls latched onto the bodies of monkeys inhabiting the elusive hall and now serve as guardians protecting the one thing they still care about. The divine child of rejuvenation, a young girl in the room beyond the elusive hall who represents the only remaining innocence amid everything that's gone wrong in Senpu Temple. On the cultural side, This boss draws directly from the concept of the four wise monkeys rooted in Japanese and broader East Asian tradition. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, do no evil. But in Sekiro, they represent the inverse. Each of the four has their own name and characteristics. Mizaru is the purple monkey with sharp eyesight. He can spot wolf from a distance, but can be fooled in darkened areas. Izawaru is the green monkey with exceptionally sensitive hearing. Loud environments can dull his ability to detect you. Kikazaru is the orange monkey who vocalizes loudly and will strike a gong to alert the others. And finally, there's Shizaru, the white monkey who cannot be seen. Armored Warrior. Armored Warrior is found on a covered bridge in Senpo Temple. He is not a Japanese samurai. His armor is a Nanbando Gusoku, a European-style suit of armor adapted for the Japanese climate. And in the Japanese version's item description, he is explicitly referred to as Nanban, a term used during the Sengoku era to describe people from the south, which in practice meant travelers from Portugal. So the figure standing before you on that bridge isn't an Ashina warrior, a shinobi, or a monk. He's a foreigner from across the ocean who somehow ended up blocking the mountain pass leading to Senpo Temple. The story of how he got there is a tragic one. He has a son named Robert who is gravely ill, with no conventional cure in sight. Upon hearing of the undying, the ability to rise from death, he made the long journey to Japan with Robert in search of it. At Senpo Temple, the monks offered him a deal: guard this bridge, and we will heal your son and grant him immortality. He accepted. What he didn't know was that the monks of Senpo had nothing left to offer. Their experiments on children, which very likely included Robert, had already ended in complete failure. He was made into a bridge guardian on the strength of a promise that could never be kept. His fight is also mechanically unique. His armor cannot be penetrated at all, making it impossible to kill him through damage alone. The only way to finish the fight is to break his posture repeatedly, pushing him backward toward the sections of the bridge where the railing is open, and sending him over the edge. As he falls, he cries out his son's name, the only word he speaks at the moment of his death. Corrupted Monk. Corrupted Monk is a boss you actually face twice, in two different locations, and each version carries its own distinct lore context. The first encounter is in Mibu village, but the figure you fight here isn't the real Corrupted Monk. It's her illusion. The true, full version only appears at the entrance to Fountainhead Palace. As for her real identity, her name is Priestess Yao, and she was formerly a guardian of Fountainhead Palace, a figure responsible for tending to and suppressing the power of the divine dragon to keep it in check, which in turn helped slow the spread of dragon rot across Ashina. She is a member of the Okami culture, a clan of female warriors from Fountainhead Palace with a direct connection to divine dragon's lineage. Her name and story draw from a real Japanese legend, that of Yao Bikuni, a woman who consumed the flesh of a ninjo, a half-human, half-fish creature, and through it gained immortality. In the legend, she married many times over, watching everyone she loved die one by one, until she eventually became a nun and ended her life after 800 years. Corrupted Monk is the embodiment of someone who has lived far beyond what was ever meant for her, so long that her original identity has slowly dissolved. Corrupted part of her comes from an undying centipede that has taken hold inside her body, the same type of parasite found within Guardian Ape. In the third phase of the true monk fight at Fountainhead Palace, the centipede visibly emerges from her body, making the source of her corruption impossible to ignore. Divine Dragon, known in Japanese as Sakura Ryu, meaning Sakura Dragon, is encountered in the Divine Realm, a dimension accessible only through an altar at the highest point of Fountainhead Palace. The Divine Dragon is the origin point of the entire dragon's heritage lineage. He came from the West, not from Japan, and upon arriving in Ashina, his presence was so overwhelming that he displaced all the local deities that had previously inhabited the sanctuary, the sacred place now known as Fountainhead Palace. The water flowing from Fountainhead is the rejuvenating water consumed by virtually every faction in the game, from Mibu village to Senpo Temple, and all of it flows from the Divine Dragon's roots, which run deep into the earth there. In other words, every instance of immortality-related madness throughout Ashina, From guardian ape being overtaken by a centipede to the Senpu monks experimenting on children, can ultimately be traced back to a single source, one dragon from the west who chose this place as his home. The sword he wields also has a real historical basis. Its design is inspired by the Shichishito, or seven-branched sword, one of the oldest surviving artifacts in Japan. The original was forged in the Kingdom of Baekje in Korea, and later presented to a Japanese emperor or empress as a gift. That detail connects neatly to the in-game lore, establishing that the divine dragon is not a creature native to Japan and arrived from the West. In terms of lore, the divine dragon doesn't truly die in any conventional sense. His body is described as eternal. What Wolf does with the mortal blade is sever his tear glands in order to obtain the divine dragon's tears contained within them. Great Shinobi Owl. Great Shinobi Owl, whose real name is Yukon Zaman Yusui, is Wolf's adoptive father. You'll encounter and fight him twice, first at the top of Ashina Castle in the mid-game, and second at the exact same location as the Lady Butterfly fight in Hirata State, though the second encounter is only accessible if you're pursuing the purification ending. He comes from the Yusui forest in northern Ashina, the same place Lady Butterfly hails from, and from there rose to become one of the most dangerous shinobi in Japan. After Isshin's rebellion, he wandered a battlefield still littered with the dead, and it was there that he found a small child. That child, rather than crying or recoiling in fear, calmly reached out and grabbed the blade Owl had pointed at his face. That moment impressed Owl enough that he decided to take the boy as his own son, and that boy became Wolf. Owl raised him according to a single governing principle known as the Iron Code: absolute obedience to one's superiors, with the father as the highest authority, followed by the Lord one is sworn to protect. The irony, of course, is that the Iron Code was a principle meant for everyone but Owl himself. 3 years before the main story takes place, Owl secretly conspired with the Interior Ministry to orchestrate the attack on Hirata State, an assault carefully staged to look like a bandit raid, when in reality it was designed to steal Kuro and seize the dragon's heritage for himself. He deliberately sent Wolf away from the estate to keep him from interfering, and when Wolf eventually arrived at the scene of the attack, Owl feigned a mortal wound, handed Wolf the key to the hidden temple, and waited. Once Wolf had defeated Lady Butterfly and was weakened from the fight, Owl stabbed him in the back. Wolf only survived because of the dragon's heritage within him. 3 years later, with the Interior Ministry having taken hold of Ashina Castle, Owl appears once more. This time he confronts Wolf openly, offering him a choice: follow Owl, honor the Iron Code, and abandon Kuro, or raise his blade against his own father. Demon of Hatred. Demon of Hatred is an optional boss found in the burning version of Ashina Outskirts, and he is the Sculptor, the old man who has been sitting in the dilapidated temple this whole time. His real name is never explicitly revealed in the game, but he is known by the name Orangutan, a reference to the great ape native to Indonesia, recognizable by its distinctive reddish-brown fur, a detail that lines up with the Demon of Hatred's appearance as a massive, flame-covered creature with a similarly reddish hue. He was once a shinobi who came dangerously close to becoming Ashura, someone so consumed by bloodshed that they lose their humanity almost entirely. It was Isshin who pulled him back from that edge, and he did it by cutting off his arm. The Sculptor withdrew from the world of shinobi after that, choosing a quieter life as a carver of Buddha statues at the dilapidated temple. Throughout the game, if you take the time to speak with him regularly, there are small but deliberate hints that his old rage never fully died. He returns to the same fear again and again, that one day he will become a monster, and that is exactly what happens. The dragon's blood-saturating Ashina, combined with decades of suppressed rage, burns away what little remains of his humanity. He transforms into a massive entity, half man and half fire. Isshin the Sword Saint. Isshin, the Sword Saint, is the final boss of Sekiro. Genichiro sacrifices himself using the mortal blade to resurrect Isshin, not as the frail, bedridden old man seen throughout the game, but as the warrior he was in his prime. Isshin is the founder of the Ashina clan, the man who seized this land from the samurai of the Tamura clan, whose spear, as you'll recall, is now the weapon Jubu wields. Throughout the game he exists only as a dying figure confined to his sickbed, and yet nearly every major character, from Genichiro to Owl, speaks of him with a mixture of reverence and barely concealed fear. The final fight is the payoff for all of it. Isshin doesn't truly want to kill Wolf. He has lived long enough to understand what Wolf is trying to do, sever the dragon's heritage for Kuro's sake. But he is also a warrior to his very core, and when Genichiro resurrects him as Ashina's last desperate gambit, he has no choice but to rise and fight. One thing worth noting for the Shura route, in that ending, Genichiro is killed off-screen by Owl, and Wolf never reaches Isshin the Sword Saint at all. Instead, the final boss of that path is Isshin Ashina, the older, ailing version, not the one resurrected to his prime. Same man, but a fundamentally different fight, and a very different context surrounding it. If you're into this kind of deep dive, subscribe for more.